So this is the learning scenario from the Burma OCS, entitled Black Cats versus White Tigers, 17th Indian Division versus the 33rd Japanese Division, basically. Interesting because Burma, everybody says, plays completely differently from the other games. Same rules, obviously, and still an operational combat game, but the emphasis here seems to have shifted because of the Japanese style of fighting. So I wanted to look at that because if I could just quote quickly from the rules, it talks about the elements which most concern them were the general lack of combat and the reliance on infiltration and supply line cutting at the tactical level, not typical of other OCS titles. I have played this scenario before, but I think I'm guilty of playing it as any other OCS game, and I thought I would try and do something completely different in this one and see if it works or not. I think I get the principle of it. Essentially, the Japanese need to bypass rather than fight, and they have a unique ability in that they can drop into level 1 hedgehogs when they don't move, at which point couple that with the ability to forage quite successfully. You have a foe that is basically not going to fight you, it's just going to go past you, cut your supply line, and wait for you to starve yourselves out. Obviously, in this particular scenario, the 17th Indian, you can see, looking straight away at the image in front of you, that they have themselves on the wrong side of a river. The Japanese positions, we have a northerly prong here, and then another one this side of the river, and a blocking force, if you like, or a pursuit force, probably, because the way I think this will go is obviously the Japanese will move up this side with this force. I think initially they will try and block this river line. This force, my intention is, again, to kind of bypass, and I'm going to let them take this route and go for a higher blocking point. So even if they escape that initial point, hopefully this force can relatively simply block off the supply at this end. That's the plan. Everything else really will run in support of that. Supply is marked, or the supply areas are marked for the Japanese here, Kaliwa, little marker. So supply comes on here, you can see we've got a truck in place, because I'm just going to ferry supply backwards and forwards. Allied supply is here at Heng Tam, with the 7th Cav, and anything else reinforcement wise for the Allies will come on and have to come on and down this road. The Japanese, there is no reinforcement. Victory is based on losses for the Allies. I think off the top of my head it is 4 units lost would be a draw. Am I right in saying that? Sorry, correction. 4 is Japanese victory. 3 is a draw, and 2 is an Allied victory. The other little thing that I have done, and I debated this a little while and decided this is what I was going to do. Scenario instructions are: the Allies set up first, the Japanese set up second, but move first. Allies cannot be placed in reserve, although they do have reserve markers. They actually have 3. The Japanese have 2 and can use them from the beginning. Now, my initial placement when I was thinking about it was I was going to use the reserves over this side of the river, but I've taken it kind of literally, and I might be completely wrong here, but I've taken it literally that normally you wouldn't be able to place a unit in reserve if it was in a ZOC. And given that the Allies were set up before the Japanese, I therefore haven't put those units into reserve. So I've used the reserves over here. 1, to get a head start with this lead unit of the prong. And secondly, there are 2 artillery units under here, which I'm not 100% on their usage in this, to be fair, but I'm thinking that what we will do is we will try and keep pressure up from the back here with these 2 units, and if I reinforce them instantly with more artillery, then we do have a secondary option, if you like, of applying pressure from the back. So that's the setup. Away we go. Okay, what can only be described as I don't know, a radical kick-off to the game, basically. I'm reminded of, I'm sure there's a quotation from General Slim, 14th Army, that the British Army fought every one of its battles on a hillside, in the rain, on a join between two maps. And this is very definitely hitting all of those criteria, because we are on the very edge of the map. My initial weather roll was a 6, which is heavy rain, which means the ground condition has turned to mud. So the Japanese turn, which I had envisaged being quite different, is a slog, to say the least. I will confess the idea of changing the weather roll did occur to me, it being such a radical version of the game, if you like, but well, that's just one of those things, isn't it? The campaign has started under immense rain pressure. So this is actually the end of the movement phase for the Japanese. You'll notice nothing's moved very far, because everything has had its movement rate doubled because of the mud. The reserve artillery units have only moved slightly, because they're just doing a quarter move. The other reserve unit over here has just moved the 1 hex, which again it'll move again in its exploitation phase. We've ended up paying out about 3T in supply, I think, just to keep us in trace supply because of the reduced movement ranges, trying to keep everything together. We did truck in the supply from Kaliwa down this road. We went and we gathered 2 more T, because we got 2T at Kaliwa. We grabbed 2T from the HQ dump and ferried it all the way down here, which again is the new dump here where these 2 artillery units have moved. Yeah, so it's a cracking start, shall we say. Although, as you can tell, you're kind of looking at it and straight away you're thinking, well, actually that road is open. So the closure on the 17th Indian, just simply because of the pressure of the ground conditions, at the moment hasn't happened. So I think the pressure of this attack is going to probably fall slightly more on this northern prong, because they're going to be the ones, and obviously we don't know what the weather's going to do, but they're going to be the ones that are going to provide the cut, rather than, as I thought it would be, that the initial cut would be from here. It looks like it's hopefully going to be from there. So crack on anyway. So this is the end of the Allied movement of turn 2, including their reaction movement. As you can see, that road was open and the 17th Indian have taken full advantage of it. An unseemly withdrawal perhaps, but there you go. And they've got themselves out of that noose. One unit, the unit you see there at the top, the 412, they're still the wrong side of the river, but again just down to how far they could move. You'll also notice that the supply dump, which started with a 5 here, we've tried to blow it in 2 successive turns and it's down to a 1 SP. I would have liked to have not been there at all, which would obviously further hamper the Japanese operations, but we couldn't quite do that. You'll also notice that these units have moved up to counter this threat, but to be fair, we don't have enough to kind of counter the Japanese threat down this side here, really. Again, good defensive position if it was going to be an attack, but I suspect the only thing the Japanese have got left of them is to try and infiltrate. Although I am kind of reflecting on the fact that this has got off to such a start that perhaps it's over before it's begun. But we'll give it a little bit longer and we'll see how we go. The other thing to just mention in passing is obviously the weather restriction. We also rolled restricted air operations because of the weather, so there was no victorious Allied Air Force swooping down on the Japanese, which the weather at least saved them that. Okie doke. Yeah, I suppose at the end of the second turn, The big critical thing is going to be the roll for initiative. So if we just do that quickly, what I will do is I've got 2 coloured dice here and 2 white dice. I'll use the white dice for the Commonwealth. And I've just rolled a 7. And for the Japanese, okay, for the Japanese it's a 5. So the Commonwealth have the initiative and can choose to go first or second in the second turn. Okay, so this is the March 19th turn. Commonwealth, having won initiative, took initiative, and with perfect timing the clouds cleared. We went straight back to unrestricted air operations, normal ground condition, clear skies, all of which was really probably just a bit too much for this Japanese offensive, I think, because what it's allowed is the consolidation of a line, as you can kind of see there. Obviously the Japanese could attack it, but I think that wasn't what this was meant to illustrate. So I think we'll probably just draw a line here and put this one down to experience. Really interesting, because my initial thing was it would be more of a disaster rather than it would be completely the opposite. But it just shows. You can see that I've got the reinforcements even have come in for the Allies down the bottom there, and we did re-roll for the for the supply, and you can see it's now down to 1T. So we didn't even leave them very much behind. Yeah, interesting, but I think, as I said, I think we'll just call that there, and I think I might even just set it up and run again, and it'll be interesting to compare the two differences, or the impact that the weather had on this particular one compared to how I think it would have panned out had the weather not done what it did. Okie doke.